Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. A new poll out today spells a storm brewing for National. The Taxpayers Union Curia poll has shown National drop nearly 3 points to 28.4%, the lowest poll for the party since it formed a government in 2023. It's while Labour is up 0.3 points to 34.4%. The Greens are up to 10.5%, NZ First down to 9.7%, ACT up to 7.5%, and Te Pāti Māori up to 3.2%. This all means that if an election was held today, the centre-left bloc could form the next government, although by a pretty small margin. The situation is being compared to National's performance in the 2020 election, where the party suffered one of the worst election losses in its history. Today on the front page, NZ Herald political editor Thomas Coughlan is with us to break down what the numbers mean and who could be on the chopping block. Thomas, tell me about why this poll might be different to others.
A couple of reasons. This poll is the worst poll from a major pollster that we've seen for the National Party. Is the worst that they have had since Christopher Luxon has been leader. It's the worst they've had since Judith Collins, his predecessor, was leader. It's incredibly low for a party in government. My understanding is that it's the lowest a National Party has ever polled whilst in government since the late 1990s, when Jeannie Shipley got a similar number. So it is incredibly low. Now, the political environment has changed a little bit. The government, the National Party is in coalition with ACT and New Zealand First, and that means that just structurally, the National Party is probably going to be polling at a lower number than National was polling when John Key was Prime Minister and National was the main party in government. So that is just a structural change there that is probably taking place. That said, even taking that into account, 28% rounded is an incredibly low number, and it does come on the back of a terrible week for the Prime Minister. Everyone, that's basically the opinion of everyone. Nicola Willis even went on ZB and said that it hadn't been a great week for the Prime Minister. She could have said it hadn't been a great week for the National Party, but she chose to say the Prime Minister. So that's everyone acknowledges it is interesting, and everyone acknowledges that. I think the real thing that did it was his response to that question about the American action in Iran. He said New Zealand supported any actions that was taken against the Iranian regime. Obviously, a very horrible regime that New Zealand does actually support taking many actions against. We do support taking many actions against the Iranian regime. We've sanctioned, participated in sanctions against them, but we do not support any actions against the Iranian regime, which is the distinction. And when Christopher Luxon was asked about whether we'd support carpet bombing, for instance, he totally fumbled his answer, and that was sort of seen as pretty disastrous, because obviously carpet bombing is widely accepted to be a war crime, and obviously it shouldn't be that difficult to say that New Zealand opposes war crimes, because we do. It's just a bipartisan thing of New Zealand politics that we are opposed to war crimes, as indeed most countries are, and his inability to articulate a simple position on that was pretty roundly panned.
Do you think that the corporate speak and the kind of fumbling through questions with pre-written responses and phrases has really tripped him up this time? Because I feel like you can go through a normal press conference or a normal post-cab by doing that, but when it comes to, like you said, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and the fact that you either do support or you don't support a war crime, that's really tripping him up.
Well, yes, I think that is one of the things that's significant as well, which is just the fact that there is a war in the Middle East. It's a very serious, one of the most serious foreign policy challenges that this government has faced, or many governments will ever face. And his inability to kind of talk his way through those challenges is really quite remarkable, and it's a massive problem for him. As a leader, you have to be comfortable in that foreign affairs space. And I think when you watched him on Monday struggle there, and you think about other prime ministers that we've had, obviously Jacinda Ardern famously was a very good sort of communicator of difficult issues, and it showed the wide gulf between his ability to sort of explain his positioning on things and other prime ministers' ability to do the same thing. It is not an easy thing to do, but it certainly didn't have to be as hard as he made it look on Monday.
Do you think on 28%, people will be in the caucus will be asking questions about your leader?
No, I think what we're focused on is, yep, you can ask the question today, are you feeling happy? And a lot of people are still feeling like life is very tough. Very different question when you get to the election, because when you get to the election, you've got a choice. Do you want these guys or do you want those guys?
But that doesn't explain why they're voting for Winston. He's in government with you and he's Mr. Popular.
Well, things come and go. Nothing to worry about there.
Will Luxon?
No, he won't be going anywhere. He's doing a very good job.
Okay.
And,
so you'll support him. You support him 100% for the election.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, people might be hearing about this being compared to the blue bloodbath of 2020 with Judith Collins at the helm. Why might we be striking those comparisons?
Because if this poll were repeated on an election day, and Nicola Willis again used her ZB interview this morning on Nick Mills's show to say that these numbers would be unacceptable if they were repeated on polling day. Basically, if they were repeated on polling day, you'd be seeing one of the worst National Party defeats in its history. The 2020 result was 25.5 something, and this obviously number is about 28. Slightly higher than 28, so it's about 2.5 to 3 points higher than that 2020 result. That 2020 result was the second worst result the National Party had ever notched up in its entire history, which is more than 80 years old, the National Party. So it is an incredibly bad result. It would be an incredibly bad result for the National Party. It would see enormous numbers of MPs lose their jobs, which is why it is also significant, because those MPs will be looking at that poll and thinking, right, should I participate in rolling the leader in order to save my skin? Because at the moment on this current poll, then I am out of the job come November. So that is why it's significant. I think also, though, you have to pair it with that Monday afternoon post-cab, and you have to pair it with his wider inability to explain himself. Because if you're a backbench MP and you were thinking, right, do I participate in this coup? You'd be looking at those public-facing events of the Prime Minister and probably questioning his ability to lead the party to better polling in the future.
Do you think that Christopher Luxon has the ability to admit that he is not the one that is meant to be at the helm come election time? Do you think he would actually resign as leader?
That's a very good question. I honestly haven't a clue. I'll be very honest. I don't know. It is just that is something that will be very deeply personal for him, and it is really anyone's guess as to whether he will make that decision. He's certainly an ambitious person. A very ambitious person who's gone through a lot of difficulty to get to the job that he has achieved. It is the great sort of pinnacle of any career, and one would imagine that he wouldn't give it up lightly, because once you give it up, it never, ever, ever comes back again.
Well, I was only asking that because I was looking around this morning and I was thinking, what was Labor polling out at when Andrew Little resigned ahead of the 2017 election? They were polling at around 23, 24, famously handing over the leadership to Jacinda Ardern, who then picked up those numbers by the end of the month up until the mid-40s. Say. So is the problem here, though, really that there's no Jacinda in the wings for National?
Yeah, there isn't an obvious Jacinda in the wings. And I think Jacinda Ardern sort of casts a bit of a shadow over New Zealand politics, because I think for many years now into the future, whenever a party's performing poorly, they'll always be looking for their Jacinda. And what made Jacinda Ardern special is that there really was only one Jacinda. Even John Key, who was the only politician in recent times who was of similar popularity, was quite a different. His path to the leadership was much more obvious. He achieved the leadership sooner, but it was a much clearer path that he had, rather than the sort of Jacinda, which was almost like flicking on a light switch, and all of a sudden she was there and the polling was good. There is no Jacinda in the National Party at the moment, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a change. But there's no obvious candidate, and that probably does help Christopher Luxon stay in his position. But it is more a thing. There are other challenges with that comparison, mainly the fact that that the national government is in government.
The Prime Minister has had a challenging week, and I actually respect him being vulnerable enough to say, well, actually, I misspoke during the week. And there has been a lot of focus on that. I always think it's good when people do admit they didn't get something quite right. We are living in a very complex and difficult time, and he is being asked to give yes-no answers to questions that are pretty subtle, have a lot of complexity, and he hasn't been able to give yes-no answers, and the media obviously have highlighted that, and he's admitted that he misspoke on an occasion. So I don't think it's been a great week for the Prime Minister.
So Winston Peters has described the poll as not good, but not the end of the world. You can see why the Nats, but also their coalition partners, might be a little bit more optimistic than most. I heard Judith Collins on Herald now this morning as well, saying that, look, there are other things happening around in the world now. It's a difficult time, etc., etc. But do you think that everyone in Parliament feels this way? And you mentioned the backbenchers before as well. Will they be really scratching their heads at this point?
Yeah, they will be. On those numbers, National would lose a lot of seats, and that could mean a large number of MPs without a job. Could mean senior MPs without a job. They would also struggle for list placings. Now, Paul Goldsmith is on the list. He's a senior MP. Nicola Willis is on the list. She's the National Party deputy. Chris Bishop is in a marginal seat, Hutt South. If National was on 28%, he'd probably lose that seat, and he'd have to get on the list. So these are senior MPs who could really struggle to find a job come November, and that does create instability.
Now, there were whisperings of a possible coup late last year, actually. What do you make of them, and will the whisperings slowly get louder this year after this poll?
Well, certainly I don't think this poll is going to help the whisperings, but it is unclear whether it will make them worse. I was here when the Simon Bridges, Todd Muller, Judith Collins kind of situation happened, and they were very slow-moving things, and then it all sort of kicks off. I think there's that famous Hemingway quote about how someone goes broke. They go broke slowly and then suddenly.
So what do you make of Nicola Willis's comments about this poll and the wording, I suppose?
I think it shows that everyone acknowledges that things are pretty bad. But I think you can read those remarks either way. She acknowledges that it's been a bad week, which is realistic, but also that it's tough all around the world. So it really is. It feels like it's anything could happen.
What is the significance of this being a Curia poll?
So Curia is the National Party's pollster and has been the National Party's pollster for a long time. They also do the National Party internal polls. So this is a Taxpayers Union Curia poll, so it's separate. But because this Curia does the National Party internal polls, you can bet that the polls that the National Party gets internally, their internal polls that they use to make decisions, are very similar to these numbers. And that is what MPs have been telling me, that their internal numbers are very similar.
What else have MPs been telling you? And generally, I guess from an audience perspective, and for someone who isn't in the beehive every day like you are, because there are good relationships between journalists and MPs and their officers and everything as well. How much actual talking goes on before one of these polls come out?
Well, we talk to MPs all the time. We talk about a number of things all the time. It's sort of the job of a gallery journalist to keep those channels of communication open and just to listen to what MPs are saying about what is happening. in Parliament. And certainly MPs, no one thinks this is a good poll, but this is quite clearly not. But the view from the MPs that I've spoken to, which is a large number of MPs, but you can't ring around all of them. The view from the MPs is that it really is a case for Christopher Luxon to decide his own future, and not a case for rolling him, because obviously he is the Prime Minister. It is an election year, and actually rolling him and wielding the knife would be quite a significant step. So the question is whether he comes to the conclusion that he can no longer go on. But that is quite a big thing to think about, and it's not clear that he is doing that at the moment. He's been silent. He's not public facing today. We don't know whether he's weighing up his future today, or whether he's just enjoying a nice Friday somewhere with his family or something. No one really knows what he's doing.
Thanks for joining us, Thomas.
No worries. Have a good weekend.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is hosted and produced by me, Chelsea Daniels. Kane Dickey is our studio operator, Richard Martin, our producer and editor, and our executive producer is Jane Yee. Follow The Front Page on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for another look beyond the headlines.